Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Hi, and welcome to Common Ground. I'm your host, Ashley Hall. On this week's episode of Common Ground, we see what Vietnam was like for a Minnesota veteran, and it's all through the lens of his own camera. The 36th annual Itasca Pioneer Farmers Show offers the public a chance to step back in time to observe the beginnings of mechanized farming and logging in northern Minnesota. Plus, join us for a little fun in the sun at the Pennington Music Fest.
Hi, my name is Ken Klose. I have a small photo studio in Staples, and I guess the reason we're here today is just to talk a little bit about what I'm doing personally with my photography. I first started with a serious interest in photography when I was in Vietnam. I served in Vietnam as an interrogator with the 101st Airborne Division from June of 1970 to April of 71. And that's where I bought what I would consider my first real camera. And in the position I was in, I had a lot of time to, free time, and we used it partly to go out and photograph the Vietnamese countryside. So this is my cover page. It's actually one of my jungle fatigue shirts that I still have, and my patches and my dog tags. I had to erase the social security number from the dog tags for obvious reasons, but anyway. And then I've got a couple of pages of text here and there, kind of just to introduce the different sections, the different areas that I'm covering. This is Fort Knox, where I did my basic training. This is the barracks that I was in. Basic training, a couple of guys from Staples that I got drafted with, and it's me in the middle there. And we became friends with a couple of guys from Michigan, one of whom I still exchange Christmas cards with, and the five of us hung out together. We were there in 1969 when the astronauts landed on the moon, and that happened on the one weekend that we had leave from basic training. So we took a cab into Louisville and rented a hotel room and got some pizzas and some beer and watched the moon landing. So that was quite the deal. You know, that was the era of the draft, and when they draft you, they didn't really have to pay you much. So here's my basic pay for the month, $92.07. And then they took out taxes. So after taxes, it was $82 monthly pay. So I went to Vietnamese language school in El Paso, Texas, Biggsfield, which is part of Fort Bliss, for 7 months. And we studied the Vietnamese language. Some photos from there, that's me on KP. And this is the language school class. It was a pretty interesting group of guys. And then from Fort Bliss, I went to a place called Fort Holabird in South Baltimore, Maryland, for intelligence school. My pride and joy, my 1966 Plymouth Valiant that I had to leave behind for my little sister to use when I went to Vietnam. Newspaper article from the local paper when I got sent over. Aerial shot of Camp Eagle, which was the main base for the 101st Airborne, where I was stationed. We were up in northern South Vietnam, just outside of Hue, and only probably about 60 miles as the crow flies from the DMZ. So we were pretty far north. These are some photos of the area. This was the first hooch I lived in. I was there only briefly, and they moved us to a little bit better one. That one was pretty ratty. A shower stall that I was part of building, and of course we didn't have indoor plumbing, so we had this beautiful shower stall. And then we no sooner than got it up, and the colonel decided he wanted that area for his parking lots. So it came down, and they rebuilt us another one somewhere else. But course, helicopters, they were ubiquitous. I mean, that was how the war was fought, by helicopter, and most commonly the Huey, or Slick as it was called. There was an infantry unit, a company across the street, basically across the road from us, and this is a shot when, I don't remember, they were either coming in on stand down or going out on a mission. We always knew when they came in on stand down because they'd get a little rowdy and, you know, have a few beers, and invariably somebody would set off a tear gas grenade. And it would come wafting up to our area eventually, and sometimes it got so bad we even put on gas masks, but you know, you had to give them their fun because they earned it. This is interesting. This is 3 guys from Staples. It's me and Roger Hall and Jack Ringel, guys I'd known Jack since the 5th grade and Roger all through high school, so they were pretty good friends. I spent a few days on a South Vietnamese fire support base shortly after I got there, which was pretty interesting. The base was meticulously kept. There was, as you can see, there wasn't a sandbag out of place. Concertina wire around the edge of the base. The views were pretty spectacular. Here again you can see the Tactical Operations Center and the sandbagging. This is a view we had from where we were staying up there dawn one morning. You know, Vietnam is a beautiful country, has a lot to offer. There was a Mars station a couple doors down from us, and when there was a good radio signal, we could go down there, make a phone call, and then that call would be patched into a ham radio operator in the States, or from the base, whatever, who would in turn relay it to another ham operator who would patch it into a telephone line to our parents. So that was how we could make phone calls. The rainy season in northern South Vietnam started in the fall, and we had to sandbag the roof of our hooch because there was an impending typhoon. The typhoon came, but it was mostly rain and not much wind. And but to give you an indication of the amount of rain that actually fell, Phu Bai, which was only about 4 or 5 miles from us, average rainfall for the month of October was 29.2 inches just for the month. So that clay that got baked hard in the summer just got slick as snot in the wet season. I mean, it was just really mucky and slippery. That's the gang at our interrogation, 1st Brigade interrogation team. The town of Lang Co, a beautiful little beach town on a little sand spit at the north end of the pass. Again, some beautiful country in Vietnam. Unfortunately, there was a war going on at the time. So. We were just a few miles from Hue, so we did spend some time going into Hue and some street scenes. You know, the marketplace in Hue, the bus stop, the bridge. Life goes on even in a war zone, and this was a couple of years after the Tet Offensive had caused so much damage there, so things had returned to a somewhat normal pace. This is the tomb of one of the 19th century emperors, the tomb of Minh Mang. We flew out there one day just to see it, and pretty interesting. Bob Hope came to Camp Eagle with his Christmas show, so we got to see that. This is a North Vietnamese Hoi Chan, a fellow who turned himself in, and that's his interrogation with a South Vietnamese lieutenant that we worked with. There's some of the interpreters that we worked with. These 2 guys were a lot of fun, really cool. This guy was really smart. He spoke several languages and spoke English well enough to play Scrabble with us, so it was pretty cool. When I was there, I had a niece who was a sophomore in high school down in Farmington, Minnesota. And her dad was one of my dad's younger brothers, and he was an Army veteran. And he probably said, "Nancy, you know, you got a cousin in Vietnam, it'd be nice if you wrote him some letters." So she wrote, and we corresponded back and forth. Well, a few years ago, her mother was coming through town, and she said, "I've got something for you." And she handed me this packet of letters that I had written back to her daughter Nancy back in 1970 and 71. And it was really interesting for me to read them, kind of revealing, because there were things in there I'd written about that I just completely forgotten about over the years. Hue was the old imperial capital of Vietnam up until, well, up through the 19th century pretty much, until the French occupation. And they had in Hue what was called the Citadel, which was kind of the inner city. It was interesting. It had suffered a lot of damage during the Tet Offensive of '68, but there was still a lot to see, so we spent some time there. This was a night we took some rocket attack. We took, what did I say there? I think it was about 9 rockets. A couple of them landed within 30 yards of our hooch. That was probably the scariest time I had. So the 122 rockets will definitely get your attention. And then you can see they flattened every tire on every Jeep in the area and smashed, the shrapnel smashed every windshield. And this is my 15 minutes of fame. After I got back, I sold 2 pictures to the Time Life book series, and they went into this book, Collision of Cultures, which I have a copy in the office there. This is one of my favorite photos. It was a poker game in our hooch. Every payday there were some guys that would get together and play poker, and I never got involved with it because I was too tight with my money, too afraid of losing it. My mother had a saying, scared money never wins, and I think she's probably right, but anyway. But they used these 2 photos, went into the, so that was part of my 15 minutes of fame.
I saw a world of light, all full of colors, was a beautiful sight. Then the light started coming down. Next thing you know, my feet were off the ground. Voice deep inside my head, it said, boy, your old world is...
I'm Steve Ross, and this is the Pennington Music Festival, and it's mainly a party just to get let musicians play, local musicians and that kind of thing, just to give them a chance to get out and play on a big stage, have fun. Started quite a few years ago where we invited Sean Phillips to come up and play in my backyard. We met him at a concert down in the cities, and he agreed to do it, and so we brought him up here and had him play in my backyard, and he did a couple of seminars in Bemidji at the same time. He brought his sitar into the music school and did a little seminar there for them too. So that's kind of how it started. Well, my original goal for this thing was to have a festival for the Pennington area that would bring people to the Pennington area. It's a beautiful area here. But at the same time, I've always been into music, and so I wanted to bring big-name musicians here, but also local musicians, and have them intermingle with each other and possibly play with each other, just talk to each other, whatever, you know, get to know each other, talk about music, business, you know, and that kind of thing, and also just have a good time.
Everybody needs some sunshine. Everybody.
I think it's just the people. Just a whole bunch of people enjoying each other and being happy and sitting around in the sun and listening to really good music.
Everybody needs to be heard. Everybody needs to share the soul. Everybody needs a kind word.
I'm Keith Butler, and we're here today at the Lake Itasca Region Pioneer Farmers. I grew up here. I've been here most of my life. I only live a mile and a half from the show. I've been involved here, and it's just such a privilege to be a part of this club. The organization was started in 1975. It was incorporated in 1976. We had 14 shows in Bagley, and in 1989 they purchased property here and the show was moved here to Itasca. So this is the 36th year, the 36th show that we never missed a year, and it's growing in size and popularity every year. There are several main focuses. But one of the focus is restoration of old tractors and other machinery. And we have a parade every day at 1 o'clock. That is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. show is held every third weekend in August. And there's a parade every day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that's the main focus. Another focus, of course, is thrashing. Another focus, of course, is sawmilling. There are several sawmills here on the grounds. There is an original sawmill that's up on the hill.
Hi, I'm Earl Hemrick. I'm a member of the Lake Itasca Region Pioneer Farmers. This particular project is the reconstruction of the J. Neal's Red Bee sawmill. The purpose of the machine was to make logs into lumber, trees into logs and into lumber. This mill was set up in Cass Lake, Minnesota in 1900 by the J. Neal's Lumber Company. And then they operated this mill at Cass Lake until about 1922. Then it was purchased by the BIA and went to the Red Lake Mills at Red Bee, Minnesota. It operated there until about 1960. Then it was shut down, and a farmer out in Oslo, Minnesota by the name of Eldon purchased the mill, and he set up the steam engine for his own show, but he never did set up the mill. After he died, his son sold all the equipment to the Pioneer Farmers, and we started refurbishing it. We do have a boiler, a wood fire boiler that produces steam, and that steam production then is piped to the steam engine, which is creating power for transmission of the flywheel. And then from there to the line shaft. And the line shaft is no more than a shaft with pulleys on it, because multi-facets of the sawmill could be powered off of the line shaft. Then from the line shaft, we use a flat belt to power the pulley on the band wheel, and then the shotgun feed, which requires steam. So those are the main components of the equipment that we have currently available to set up. And the other unique feature about this mill, we're running a flat belt. It's a 28-inch wide leather belt, and we have every reason to believe that it might be an original belt made over 100 years ago. To pipe in the steam cylinder is going to take some additional money, because it's fairly expensive for steam piping. And then at that time, hopefully by next showtime next year, we hope to be able to run the band mill as well as the steam shotgun feed, but we will still, as we progress, we have other auxiliary equipment that could be added to this mill.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed the show, and we look forward to seeing you next week right here on Common Ground. If you have a segment idea for Common Ground pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org or call us at 218-333-3022. To view this episode or any Common Ground segment, visit us at lptv.org/Common Ground. For individual segments or copies of Common Ground, please call 218-333-3020. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.